Deep ocean currents. Water currents beyond the depth of 500 meters are known as deep water or ocean currents. These currents are formed due to the differences in temperature and density of the water in different parts of the ocean. This is known as thermohaline circulation. It means that there is a circulation where the warm currents from the surface of the water moves to the bottom and cold currents from the bottom move upward to the surface of the water. These currents flow till the seabed of the ocean. They flow like rivers continuously below the surface of the sea. The difference in temperatures of various parts of the ocean is the major reason behind the deep sea currents. Warm water has lower salinity and density. Such water comes to the surface of the sea. Cold water with high density goes down. This movement causes the deep sea water currents. As you observe figure 5.6, deep ocean currents, you can see that the movement of these currents, the warm current is seen at the surface of the water, whereas the cold current has high density for which it is observed at the depth of the ocean. Generally, the surface water near Greenland and Europe moves to more depths. This water moves to the Antarctica at these depths. Later, the water moves to the surface. Thus, the redistribution of the ocean water keeps occurring. This redistribution takes around 500 years to complete. This type of movement is also known as conveyor belt. If you observe figure 5.5, deep ocean currents, you'll see the distribution of warm and cold currents. The conveyor belt begins on the surface of the ocean near the pole in the North Atlantic. Here, the water is chilled by the Arctic temperatures. That is, towards the poles, it is very cold. Towards the Arctic area, it is very cold. The temperature drops. It also gets saltier because when sea ice forms, the salt does not freeze and is left behind in the surrounding water. The cold water is now more dense due to the added salts and sinks towards the ocean bottom. Surface water moves in to replace the sinking water, thus creating a current. Now, as you have seen over here, that what is the reason for these currents that are generated? It is because the surface water moves in to replace the sinking water. Okay, that is how ocean currents are, or that is how a current is created. This deep water moves south between the continents, past the equator, and down to the ends of Africa and South America. The current travels around the edge of Antarctica where the water cools and sinks again, as it does in the North Atlantic. Thus, the conveyor belt gets recharged. As it moves around Antarctica, two sections split off the conveyor and turn northward. One section moves into the Indian Ocean, the other into the Pacific Ocean. These two sections that split off warm up and become less dense as they travel northward toward the equator, and so they rise to the surface, that is upwelling. They then loop back southward and westward to the South Atlantic, eventually returning to the North Atlantic where the cycle begins. Importance of deep ocean currents. Due to thermohaline circulation, movement of sea water occurs on a large scale. Because of this circulation, ocean water moves from the surface to the bottom and from the bottom to the surface. Warm water is transferred to the bottom from the surface, and the nutrient rich cold water is circulated to the surface. Do you know these circular pattern of the movements of the ocean currents give rise to certain peculiar features in the ocean? They are called gyres. The Sargasso Sea in the Atlantic Ocean is such an example. It is marked by the circular patterns of ocean currents. It does not have land boundaries and is only surrounded by ocean currents. It gets its name from the sargassum seaweed. The water is still here. This sea is 1,100 km wide and 3,200 km long. Study the map as shown in figure 5.4 and answer the following questions. What are the major types of ocean currents? The major types of ocean currents are horizontal surface ocean current and deep ocean currents. What do you call the currents flowing from the equator to the poles? The currents flowing from the equator to the poles are called warm currents. What do you call the currents flowing from the poles to the equator? The currents flowing from the poles to the equator are called cold currents. When the currents are moving in a circular manner, what difference is visible in their direction in the northern and southern hemisphere, respectively? The answer is the ocean currents move in clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and in anti-clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. What might happen at the places where these currents meet? Answer: thick fog is formed at the places where these currents meet. Now, these currents are warm and cold currents, as we studied earlier. When two different types of currents meet along the coast, then what type of human settlements and occupations are seen? Answer: good fishing grounds and fishing occupation, plankton, vegetation, etc. grow. This is food for fish breeding.